Hi there. We're through the Bible in 1 year. We are on day 163. And today we're reading about Solomon's palace that he built after he had just finished building the Lord's house and the temple. Now he's working on his thing. Let's go over there. And they're going to have us read it twice, once in 1 King 7, and then we will be in 2 Chronicles 4, which is probably going to say the same thing but with different numbers. So, like different people wrote it. Okay, Solomon's Palace Complex. Solomon completed his entire palace complex after 13 years of construction. Wow. He built the house of the forest of Lebanon. It was 150 feet long, 75 feet wide, 45 feet high. That is a big palace. On 4 rows of cedar pillars, with cedar beams on top of the pillars. It was paneled above with cedar at the top of the chambers that rested on 45 pillars, 15 per row. Hold on. Okay. There were 3 rows of window frames facing each other in 3 tiers. All the doors and doorposts had rectangular frames and the openings facing each other in 3 tiers. He made the hall of pillars 75 feet long and 45 feet wide. A portico was in front of the pillars, and a canopy with pillars was in front of them. He made the hall of the throne, where he would judge, the hall of judgment. It was paneled with cedar from the floor to the rafters. Solomon's own palace, where he would live, in the other courtyard behind the hall, was similar construction, and he made the house like this hall for Pharaoh's daughter, his wife. All of these buildings were costly stones, cut to size and sawed with saws in the inner and outer surfaces from foundation to coping and from the outside to the great courtyard. The foundation was made of large, costly stones, 12 and 15 feet long. Above were also costly stones, cut to size as well as cedar wood. Around the great courtyard, as well as the inner courtyard, was the Lord's temple, and the portico of the temple were the 3 rows of dressed stone and a row of trimmed cedar beams. King Solomon had Hiram brought from Tyre. He was a widow's son from the tribe of Naphtali, and his father was a man of Tyre, a bronze craftsman. Hiram had great skill, understanding, and knowledge to do every kind of bronze work, so he came to King Solomon and carried out all his work. Right. The bronze pillars. He cast 2 hollow bronze pillars, each 27 feet high and 18 feet in circumference. Holy mackerel. He also made 2 capitals of cast bronze to set atop the pillars. 7.5 feet was the height of the first capital. 7.5 feet was the second capital. The capitals on top of the pillars had gratings of latticework. Reese made a chainwork, 7 for the first capital, 7 for the second. He made the pillars with 2 encircling rows of pomegranates and 1 grating to cover the capital on the top. He did the same for the second capital. And the capitals on top of the pillars in the portico were shaped like lilies 6 feet high. The capitals on the 2 pillars were also immediately above a rounded surface next to the grating, and 200 pomegranates were in rows encircling each capital. He set up the pillars and the portico of the sanctuary. He set up the right pillar named Jachin. He set up the left pillar named Boaz. I remember reading this before, huh? The tops of the pillars were shaped like lilies, and the work of the pillars was completed. The reservoir. Wow. He made the cast reservoir, metal reservoir, 15 feet from brim to rim, perfectly round. It was 7.5 feet high and 45 feet in circumference. Ornamental gourds encircled it below the brim, 10 every half yard, completely encircling the reservoir. The gourds were cast in 2 rows. When the reservoir was cast, it stood on 12 oxen facing north, 3 facing west, 3 facing south, 3 facing east. All right. The reservoir was on top of them, and all their hindquarters were toward the center. The reservoir was 3 inches thick, and its rim was fashioned like the brim of a cup or of a lily blossom. It held 11,000 gallons. That's a big pool, huh? The bronze water carts. Let's read about the bronze water carts. Then he made 10 bronze water carts. Each cart was 6 feet long, 6 feet wide, 4.5 feet high. This was the design of the carts. You ready? They had frames between the cross pieces, and on the frames between the cross pieces were lions, oxen, and cherubim. On the cross pieces was a pedestal above, and below the lines of the oxen's wreaths of hanging work. Each cart had 4 bronze wheels with bronze axles. Underneath the 4 corners of the basins were cast support each next to a wreath, each water and the water cart's opening inside the crown on the top was 18 inches wide. The opening was round, made as a pedestal 27 inches wide. On it were carvings, but their frames were square, not round. There were 4 wheels under the frames, and the wheel axles were part of the water cart. Each wheel was 27 inches tall. The wheel's design was similar to that of chariot wheels. Their axles, rims, spokes, and hubs were all of cast metal. 4 supports were on the 4 corners of each water cart. Each support was one piece of the water cart, and the top of the cart was a band 9 inches high, encircling it. Also, the top of the cart, its branches and frames were one piece, so that he engraved cherubim, lions, and palm trees on the plates of his braces and on its frames, wherever each had a space encircling these. In this way, he made 10 water carts using the same casting dimensions and shape for all of them. More than I ever wanted to know about a water cart. Okay? Bronze basins and other utensils. Then he made 10 bronze basins, each basin holding 220 gallons. That's not a basin, that's huge. Each was 6 feet wide, one basin for each of the 10 water carts. He set the 5 water carts on the right side of the temple and 5 on the left side. He put the reservoir near the right side of the temple towards the southeast. The Hiram made the basins, the shovels, and the sprinkling basins. Completion of the bronze works. So Hiram finished all the work that he was doing for King Solomon on the Lord's temple. Okay. 2 pillars, bowls for the capitals were on top of the 2 pillars, and the 2 gratings covering the both bowls of the capitals were on top of the pillars. The 400 pomegranates and the 2 gratings, the 2 rows of pomegranates, each grating covering the capital bowls, and the top of the pillars, the 10 water carts, the 10 basins on the water carts, the reservoir, the 12 oxen, and underneath the reservoir, the pots, the shovels, sprinkling basins. All the utensils Hiram made for the King Solomon at the Lord's temple were made of burnished bronze. The king had them cast in clay molds in the Jordan Valley between Succoth and Acre. Solomon left all the utensils unweighed because there were so many. The weight of the bronze was not determined. Hundreds of thousands of pounds, no doubt. Completion of the gold furnishings. Wow. Solomon also made all the equipment in the Lord's temple. The gold altar, the gold table, and the bread in the presence of was placed on the pure gold lampstands in front of the inner sanctuary. 5 on the right, 5 on the left. The gold flowers, lamps, and tongs, the pure gold ceremonial bowls, wick trimmers, sprinkling basins, ladles, and fire pans, and gold hinges for the doors in the inner temple. That is the most holy place, and for the doors of the temple sanctuary. So all the work King Solomon did in the Lord's temple was completed, and Solomon brought the consecrated things of his father David, the silver, the gold, the utensils, and put them in the treasuries of the Lord's temple. Okay. Now let's read it all over again, shall we? From 2 Chronicles 4. And it'll be different. Okay. He made a bronze altar 30 feet long, 30 feet wide, and 15 feet high. Then he made the cast metal reservoir 15 feet from rim to rim, perfectly round, 7.5 feet and 45 feet high in circumference. The likeness of oxen was below it, completely encircling it, 10 every half yard, completely surrounding the reservoir. The oxen were cast in 2 rows when the reservoir was cast. It stood on 12 oxen, 3 facing north, 3 facing north, south, east, west. Get that? The reservoir was on top of them, and all their hindquarters were towards the center. The reservoir was 3 inches thick at its rim and fashioned like the brim a cup of a lily blossom that could hold 11,000 gallons. He made 10 basins for washing and put the 5 on the right, 5 on the left. The parts of the burnt offering were rinsed in them, but the reservoir was used by the priest for washing. Lampstands, tables, and courts. He made the 10 gold lampstands according to their specifications and put them in the sanctuary, 5 on the right, 5 on the left. He made 10 tables and placed them in the sanctuary, 5 on the right, 5 on the left. He also made 100 gold poles. He made the courtyard of the priests and the large court and the doors of the court. He overlaid the doors with bronze. He put the reservoir on the right side towards the southeast. Then Hiram made the pots, the shovels, and the bowls. Completion of the bronze furnishings. Okay. So Hiram finished doing the work that he was doing for King Solomon in God's temple. 2 pillars, the bowls, the capitals, top of the 2 pillars, the 2 gratings for the covering the bowls of the capitals that were on top of the pillars, the 400 pomegranates for the 2 gratings and the 2 rows of pomegranates for each grating, covering both capitals, bowls on top of the pillars. He also made water carts and the basins of the water carts, the 1 reservoir and the 12 oxen underneath it, the pots, the shovels, and the forks. This is the house that Hiram built, right? And all the utensils, Hiram Abi made them for King Solomon for the Lord's temple. All these were made of polished bronze. The king had them cast in clay molds in the Jordan Valley between Succoth and Zerah. Solomon made all these utensils in such great abundance that the weight of the bronze was not determined. Tons, right? completion of the gold furnishings. Once again, Solomon also made all the equipment in God's temple and the gold altar, the tables in which to put the bread, the presents, the lampstands, the lamps of pure gold to burn in front of the inner sanctuary according to the specifications, the flowers, the lamps, the gold tongues of purest gold, the wick trimmers, sprinkling basins, ladles, and fire pans of purest gold, and the entryway to the temple, its inner doors to the most holy place, and the doors of the temple sanctuary of gold. There you go. All the details of the stuff he was building. Now, I remember reading before that during Solomon's reign, gold was as common as stones. So, tomorrow we're reading Kings 8 and 2 Chronicles 5. We're going to continue with this whole thing, matching chapter for chapter. So, there you have it. That's day 163 in Solomon's reign. 13 years to build this palace, and he was still, the whole time, still working on God's temple. So, and I remember saying the Holy of Holies, the room in the Holy of Holies was lined with gold, and they used 45,000 pounds of gold to line that one room. Wow. I guess it was all taken later when Solomon was no longer around and they fell out of God's favor and got looted. So, but there you have it. Catch up on any you may have missed when I say you got the whole thing, even the small details that get a little boring to read, but at least we can say we read them, right? So, till tomorrow, we'll do it all over again. Keep studying. See ya.